Welcome to Moonbeaming, a podcast about magic, creativity, the tarot, lunar living, and more. I'm your host, Sarah Faith Gottesdiener, and I'm so happy you're here. Hi, welcome to Moonbeaming. I'm so happy you're here. This is such a fantastic episode. I cannot wait for everyone to listen to it. If this is your first time tuning in, you're in for a treat. This is a podcast where I share knowledge about tarot, magic, business, art, life, creativity, healing, transformation, archetypes, the moon, and so much more. And also, I get to have conversations with people I admire, I respect, people who I am influenced by. And today is one of those days. I had the opportunity to have a conversation with the wonderful, wise, and talented Latham Thomas. For those of you who are not familiar with Latham and her work, I'm going to read her bio. After giving birth to her son Fulano in 2003, Latham Thomas set out on a mission to help women reclaim birth. A graduate of Columbia University and the Institute for Integrative Nutrition, Latham is a maternity lifestyle maven, world-renowned wellness leader, and master birth doula on the vanguard of transforming the wellness movement. Named one of Oprah Winfrey's Super Soul 100, Latham is bridging the gap between optimal wellness, spiritual growth, and radical self-care, and is the go-to for modern holistic lifestyles for women. She authored the best-selling book titled Mama Glow, A Hip Guide to a Fabulous and Abundant Pregnancy, and most recently published bestseller Own Your Glow, a soulful guide to luminous living and crowning the queen within. Latham serves on the Tufts University Nutrition Council and is also a member of the Well and Good Council, where she provides expertise in women's wellness, pregnancy, and self-care. Wow. Our conversation was incredible. It was really an alchemizing conversation that I'll be coming back to again and again. We spoke about how Latham came to do the work she does in the world today through a spiritual experience, that of giving birth. Latham shares how she holds space for the kind of work she does, which is really about dwelling in the liminal, dwelling in between worlds, being close to life, to birth, to death. We talk about ritual. Latham shares about her idea of spiritual fitness, which I love. She was the first person I heard coin that term, spiritual fitness, and I love it very much. And she goes into what that entails. We talk about so much: cycles, transformation. We talk about repatterning and reprogramming, about changing our consciousness levels, particularly around systemic oppression and capitalism. It's just a phenomenal conversation. It's very lunar. We had it on a full moon. We had it on the full moon that Latham gave birth to her child on many moons ago. And so Latham shares her birth story with us. It's vulnerable. It's beautiful. It's a beautiful, deep exchange. And just as a gentle note, we talk about a lot of paradigms, a lot of realities. We talk about a lot of truths. So while we do not go into any kind of graphic detail, we go there. That's just what we do when we get together and we talk. So I just wanted to give a gentle encouragement to take care of yourself. So without further ado, here is the fantastic Latham Thomas. Hello. I have the most special guest here today. This is someone who you probably already know, you probably are familiar with her work because she is a trailblazer. She is groundbreaking. She is inspiring. She inspires me all the time. And I know you are going to love this conversation and love this person as much as I do. Latham, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Sarah Queen. How are you?
I'm okay. I wanted you to maybe just introduce yourself a little bit, however you feel like introducing yourself for our listeners.
Sure. I'm located right now in Brooklyn, New York, on land that's been ceded by the Lenape tribe. Um, I am from California, from Oakland, and I'm a mother of an 18-year-old boy. I, yeah, I know it goes really fast. So I'm here as someone who's about to have an empty nest, who's entering into a new phase of their life. And as we celebrate the full buck moon, my son was actually born 18 years ago under the halo of the full buck moon on July 13, 2003. So I'm feeling so much energy and charge on this day as I prepare for this new phase of life. And I'm the founder of a company called Mama Glow that's focused on reproductive justice through birth equity and really making sure that birthing individuals have the most safe and dignified, healthy, and empowered birth processes as possible. And so that's the work that I'm here to do, and really helping people get to a place of reclamation of the body as sacred, whatever that body is, and just helping us return home to our bodies, whatever that means to each of us.
Beautiful. And we're going to talk a lot about that today. I wanted to begin by reflecting. It's the full moon. I wanted to reflect how I perceive you and how I experience you. And I wanted to also tie it into some of the archetypes of the year in the tarot.
Mm.
So I know you're a Taurus sun,
Yeah,
a beautiful Taurus sun. And don't you have something in Sagittarius?
I have Sag Moon.
Great. Okay, so here we go. So this is the year of the Hierophant, which in the
Mhm.
tarot corresponds to Taurus. And you are so much more than all of it. There's so many archetypes within all of us, but I wanted to kind of hone in on some of these qualities that I see. Also, Temperance is the Hierophant's teacher card, and Temperance correlates with Sagittarius. So you have this angel
Mm.
energy and you have this grounded energy. You're this alchemizer between spirit and earth. It's like you took a lot of your spiritual experiences and philosophies and you created it and offered it to the world in a practical, tangible, educational way. And what I find really interesting is this through line between your own spirituality and your own maybe unique and intensely felt purpose that we'll talk about later, and your transmission of it through education, through reforming and transforming the system. Like that is very Hierophant. You are like, okay, this is what happened to me. Now I am seeing this happen to other people. I want to offer up transformation. I want to alchemize a situation. There's something that you do that is both so much a blessing to so much more of just projecting birthing people or whatever it is that you do. You are creating different systems entirely, and you're showing people what can be possible. And the other thing that I really see with you that I'm in awe of, and I've like been in awe of the first time I ever met you, is you are just so energetically aligned.
Mm.
You are so good at living. Your work in the world is so intense. That's one word to say it. There's a lot of intensity around what you do.
Mm-hmm.
You're not just a you're not just holding space for people when they're in their most intense experience or one of their most intense experiences of their life, which is giving birth,
Mm-hmm.
made much more intense if you are a Black person giving birth in the medical system, right? So there's all of those layers. There's all of the complexities, intensities. You do advocacy work. You're a teacher. You hold space for other doulas. And you're dealing with the public in a way that not many people do. And you're dealing with the public in a way around a very intense and very personal subject. And also, I see you just like you exude the glow. Like you really are Mama Glow. Like you exude happiness and good health and generosity and fun and joy. And like you're really engaged with life and you just like you're living life so well. You're so good at living life
Mm.
that I just see that in you. And I just want to like spend a minute there because it's amazing.
Wow. First of all, thank you for that reflection, that divine reflection, and for the mapping of what's to come, but also what's anchoring me in this year. That was really beautiful. And I have so many, I mean, this could be a love fest hour because I have so many things to say about how you show up in the world and how you live into community. You know, Sarah has this incredible way of drawing people to her, and I don't know if she's even fully conscious of like who she's drawing into her orbit because it's like years before knowing her, I knew her, you know, and through her work with many moons before there was the planner and then the planner. But I was drawn to her through that work when I found the book years ago in a little, I think it was like an apothecary in Brooklyn, and I wasn't even living in Brooklyn yet, and I passed by this little place called Species by the Thousands, and I was like, I'm getting this. What is this? Who is she? And I'm like reading, and I was like, okay, I love this, and I just became one of the cult followers. This is kind of before social was really a big thing, and so you had to really just know and be, pulled into like this vortex that she had created around really fortifying witches and, craftspeople and brujas and, you know, um, and priestesses and folks who were really just connected to the grounding and to the alchemy of of healing and of spell work, of altar work, and so I found that it's really in this time so rare to find people who are bringing together the tools, but also doing the work to really explore the areas where there has been colonization, where there has been repackaging, retooling, uh, resourcing without credit, and I love how everything that you bring, Sarah, is always about sort of being in line with source energy, aligning with ancestral tradition, and giving the credit and creating that connection for people to understand where our wisdom traditions come from and how to find our way into deeper practice, right? If that's part of your path. And so I always loved that was just part of who you always have been, even before moments of, reckoning and social justice sort of this movement for Black lives, but also just like an awareness more of, how the deep rooted tentacles of, white supremacist patriarchy and its effects on all of us, and how these systems are sort of working on us even before we're born.
That's right.
Understanding how to, I think, articulate to people who are in spaces that have been deeply harmful to individuals who are on their spiritual paths and living their spiritual lives, where a lot of what you're experiencing is like erased for bypassing and stuff. And so just to see how you have provided tether for people and voice for people and brought together incredible leaders and folks that all love you to be part of the movement, I think is so amazing. And so I'm a fan, I've always been a fan.
Mutual admiration society. So I want to start. Thank you. I'm receiving it. I'll be receiving it all day, all weekend. I want to start with you having this incredibly spiritual experience, giving birth to your son, Fulano.
Yeah.
And it led to you eventually creating a school, teaching thousands of people, creating advocacy programs, and leading this movement to protect predominantly Black birthing people, but all, as you said, like an assault on one is an assault on all. Reforming and transforming the wellness, medical, and doula industry. Can you talk a little bit about that spiritual experience and how it kind of wove its way into what you're doing now?
Yes, thank you for that invitation. It was July 13, 2003 on a full moon. Exactly the energy that you're feeling in this moment, you and I, as we are washed in this energy of the buck moon. And I was 41 weeks pregnant, which is normal for first time babies. I always say the babies come on their birthdays. And so my son knew when he was going to come. And that was the day that he chose to, enter embodied in flesh. And so we had just hung out all day, walking around New York City. That's where I was pregnant and living. And it was a hot day in July, y'all. So think about July. Think about just the heat. And now layer that onto New York City. Hot, humid, right? All the things. So I was with my son's father, we're just walking. I'm out here like, okay, it would be great if this baby decided to come. And I remember at the end of the day, like taking a shower, getting in bed and getting cozy. And then I just like started to talk to God and I was like, I'm tired. And it's it's been a while, it's like I'm ready. And the really beautiful thing about processes like these is that, you have time to evolve in your consciousness. Obviously, you see your body expanding, but you also expand in your consciousness. You soften in ways, not just physically, but also emotionally and mentally become more pliant. And so I was actually really ready, and welcoming of the process. So, but I just couldn't wait for it to start. I was like, let's go, right? So we're in the room and I was in the bed and we're listening to Mahalia Jackson. And she was singing, and I have to find the actual song again, but she was sort of like, she said, touched by the Holy Ghost in this moment. And I felt this pop and then just warm water gushing. And I was like, oh my God, my water broke. And of course, my son's father thought it was urine. So he's like, get out the bed. And I was like, it's not. I promise it's not pee, And I stood up and it was like, if you ever saw Sex in the City where Miranda's water breaks, it's like that, like full TV, right? Like all over the floor. And that was sort of the moment that would, jumpstart everything. And I remember my son's godfather came over. I was too excited to go to sleep. The midwives were like, try to go to bed. And I was like, okay. And what did I do? I stayed up and watched jazz documentaries till like 4 a.m. And when I finally fell asleep, because it's like 12:30 to 4:30, I'm like up, right? Excited. I finally fell asleep. And then around like 6:30, I was like, oh, I feel stuff. Okay, that's cool. And then around 8, I was like, ooh, I really feel things. So I was like, let me get up, take a shower. So I just kind of like, did my own thing. And then around 8:39, I was like, I want to go. Like it got intense. And so we head down. And what was beautiful was we were living in 222 West 23rd. And my son was actually being delivered at 222 West 14th, which was amazing. I know. And it was exactly 7 blocks away. And so it was like really kind of perfect. And so I was obviously into the numerology of it all and excited about just the prospect of delivering at this place, which was sandwiched between a nightclub that we used to frequent and just like a kind of deli. And so the nightclub used to be the Nels, and then it became the Derby and up and down. So my son thinks he was born in a nightclub, but it was a really fun way to, like go from partying to like, oh, I'm having my baby next door. So here we go to the birth center, right? And the energy was really, 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 I would say like high in terms of nerves, not for me, but for, my son's father, his grandfather who recently passed, and his godfather. And they all take me together, these 3 men, right?
Wow.
And I'm being ushered in by them. And my best friend was on her way. She soon after became an OBGYN after witnessing my son's birth. And so that was really quite amazing. But so we get there and, my son's grandfather, he goes, you get her in the bed, hurry, hurry, she's having a baby. And the midwives just watched. Silence, maybe like 5 minutes or so, total silence. They didn't even acknowledge them. They just watched me and how I was moving, how I was coping, the movements, the rhythm, the way that I articulated my body, the sounds I was making. And after that observation, then they took me to the back of the space where the beds were. And it was set up like a home. It was a birth center. So set up like a home, and there's a really nice, big queen size bed that we could all fit in. And there was skylights. So the light was really cast very beautifully in the room. And there was a big tub with jets so I could hang out in there and labor. And that's what I did. I got in the tub and I labored, and I still remember, I can close my eyes and I can just recall how I was in that tub and how full my belly was. And I remember the jets on my back and on my low belly. And I just remember, my hands on the side of the tub and just cradling my chin and swaying from side to side. And I remember just making these nice, like low sounds, like almost like oming, but it was just like toning and sounding and singing really, right? And that went on for, maybe 2 hours or so. And I felt like it was time to have the baby. And at one point they asked me to come out of the tub and squat in the bed. And as I was doing that, I felt this heat like around me, this halo. And it was like, I also felt as if I was being watched or like observed in some way. And so I look up and I see in the shape of a half, like a horseshoe shape, which is like a U, right? So it moves from behind my head to either side of me, and it was open in the front. And I look up and I see this shape, and I pointed and said, I want to go up there. And when I looked up, who was looking down on me were they were people, but they were forms. So they were like, they had a head, they had a neck and shoulders, and they were cloaked in like these sort of red robes that were patterned. And then they had their arms across their chest. So it was like right hand to left shoulder, left hand to right shoulder. And each of those hands were touching onto the other's hands that were also next to them because they were side by side. And so they were linked in that way. And then also looking down on me and hovering. And I said, I want to go there. Like, that's where I want to be. Right. And so I felt myself just separate from my body. I just felt myself ascend and suddenly was with them. And I was able to look down from the vantage point that they were at and watch my son be born. And so I was saying to people in the room, oh, wow, look at all the hair he has. And I was not physically in a
Couldn't
position that
see
I could
him.
see him.
Right. Yeah.
It was not possible. And so that, and everybody was like looking around, like they recall, like my midwife recalls till this day, my son's father, everyone in the room recalls. So when I was explaining it back, they're like, no, yeah, that happened. And I'm like, okay, so yeah, I wasn't hallucinating, but I also was in this deeply like cosmic, spiritual, like just this nugget of being swaddled by my ancestors while bringing forth my son. So I felt divinely protected. I felt like that they were in the room with me and watching me cross this threshold to the other side. And I had something on the other side that I didn't have when I started. And it wasn't just my son. There was this other part of myself that had come into community with the divine through my lineage, through people who had come before me who were ready to sort of not only usher me, but channel through me the ancestral wisdom that guided me through the process. And so I felt that. And, you know, in thinking about the sort of ancestral technology and specifically the African ancestral technology that I carry with me, you know, I also understand that, you know, we have a way of looking at the world that is through a very Cartesian lens, right? Which is very like you are bound to your body. And you know, I think therefore I am, and all of this like consciousness that is like bound, you know, and mind and body have a little bit to do with each other, but not too much, right? And but forget about spirit, right? Forget about the spirit body. And so because of that framework, we don't have science that can explain that experience. We can explain it biochemically, but we cannot explain it in the ways that we can in all of our traditions that celebrate this continuum that is everlasting and that is forward and reaching back and present.
Right.
So when we can unbind ourselves from this tool of this more European way of seeing ourselves
Right.
in the world, we can be free to like have the deeply spiritual experiences and actually embrace them as such. And that's what was available to me.
I mean, what an experience, what a story. You touched upon so many incredible points. You know, as I was listening to you, I also just want to reflect back, like, how unimaginative is it to think, oh, there's nothing outside of me? How unimaginative is it to decide that you just have this one way and it's only based on the material and it's only based on what you think, or on like, what? I want to know so much more. Yeah, there's so much more. And the other thing you touched upon that just sort of made me want to stay there for a moment was this interweaving you spoke about of the ancestors and birth. This threshold of, I'll just call it death and then life and then rebirth. And since that moment, you've stayed a lot in those spaces, you know, between life and death, in these liminal and vast and mysterious and also intensely embodied, right? Because when you're helping to deliver a baby, you've got to be grounded. And also there is this larger energy or, you know, these other messengers or experiences that you, the parents, the people in the room might be touching upon. And I'm just wondering, have you always been drawn to these spaces of transformation and complexity and intensity?
What a great question. I think that, you know, I feel like it's almost like spirit puts you where you need to be. And I feel like when you're really obedient, like if you just allow spirit to kind of order your steps and you just follow, like, I'm trusting that, like, you're guiding me because I'm also part of the compass that's guiding me, right? That I just end up in these places. So I don't know that I think when I was younger, that I was always one of those people who, even to this day, I'm like this. Like, if I'm sitting next to somebody in the plane and we start talking, like by the end, I know about their childhood. I know about like their childhood wounds. I know, right? Like, I always go in with people. It's like, if we're talking, we're gonna talk, right? And so I'm always like that to go in. I like to go underneath, for sure. And I think that when I became fascinated with the birth journey, when my mother was pregnant with my sister and I was 4 years old, that I think was like a like a like
Seed.
a seed was planted then, and so the rudiments of what will become the work later in life was definitely sort of starting to be woven in at a very young age. And so my tolerance for, or my fitness for certain settings was primed really early. So now, if it's life, if it's death, if it's abortion and loss, if it's, healing, if it's divorce, if it, like, whatever, like, wherever there's pain, as well as pleasure, as well as joy and elation, as well as sadness and grieving, like, I can be in those spaces very comfortably. So, and they're all the same face in the sense, right? They all, like, one face is like soon the other, right? And you can be in one of those spaces where, life is coming forth and it flips, and the opposite too, right? Where life is
Yeah.
happening and then very soon it becomes a transition into the afterlife. And so I think that part of how I move through these spaces, and I believe this is the same for you too, is ritualizing, the actions that
Mm.
are what become the time signature of how I move through the space. And so whatever that beat is, right? It's like it is ritualized. So what are the practices? What
Mm.
is the breath work? And it's just intuited, right? So we just walk in and we sort of, as we get used to facilitating, as you get used to how you take care of yourselves in these moments, you figure out what's needed for you
Mm.
and everyone involved. And so I think that's what it is, more than, I don't know if it's a draw to these places so much as it's like a spiritual contract. And so I
Mm.
feel like I'm just mandated to go. And it feels like whenever it comes to surface, somehow that happens to be what it is I'm stepping into, right? And I'm available to it because I feel like what God and what Spirit has been working to refine in me is the abilities to be in these spaces and to, not just for my own self, but for the people that I'm supporting, right? To help anchor them too. And being born into a son, like, my hooves are like not on the earth, like in the earth, right? Like, I am like, oof, but then I have this Sagittarius energy, which is really like about movement and about, like, sometimes running away. So I do have a tendency too that when something is uncomfortable, that I may want to run, but like the the weight of my hooves and the embodiment of, right, of being just like big in some ways, in spirit, like, anchors me sometimes too much to go, even though I might want to, right?
Mm.
And then I have Libra rising. So I have this thing of like really wanting to, like, make sure that things are equitable and see all sides. And so there's a lot so there's so many things that can be in conflict, but also that can work together, that so show up in my chart. But I would say Venus is at the nexus, like love and joy and sensuality and beauty and making things beautiful feel to me like what I'm supposed to be doing. And so I think that in these spaces that you said are really intense, right? Like I seek to make those moments beautiful. So
Yeah.
I always am trying to find like how do we do this? Like, you know, when my son's grandfather, who just recently passed away, you know, the opportunity I felt the night before his last night alive
Mm.
in the flesh. He was transitioning over like 5 days, and there was like denial amongst many people. And I just knew, right? And so I was like, okay, he's already transitioning. And there was moments of consciousness, moments of dreaming, like this sort of interesting arc that the body and spirit takes you on, and you're in and you're out. And he would ask me, he was like, hold me, because he wanted to stay in, but like was
Mm.
having moments of leaving. And the very last day, he was so calm. And I knew that we were getting close. And he, I asked, I said, we should bathe him, you know, and we did, and we bathed him and massaged him, and I washed and styled his hair and put chapstick and just caressed him and put this beautiful blanket and like all of these things, and he just looked so regal at the end. And that's the same for my grandmother from 3 years ago. It was about like how to make it regal for them. And the last words he said to me, which he always says when I say goodbye, is he was like, "Good night, honey," and those were his last words. And then the next day he was gone. But I felt like making that moment beautiful, like making you know like washing, like the ritual bathing, the taking care, the holding, especially someone who never, by the way, wanted to be touched, didn't want to be ever that somebody would have to take care of him in this way, and then
Right.
doing that but in a way of honor. And
Yep.
so to me, it's like I always think of like how we can do those things, and to bring something whole. And then I felt also whole in my heart. Like I felt okay. I felt I had been anticipating what the loss would be like, but somehow when there's a way that we can lay in and weave in ritual, it makes it easier. And I don't think it takes away all the pain, but what I would say is that it makes it easier because there is an imprint that you left on the spirit body as they travel on. Whoever that person is, if you touch their life for a minute and they move on, if you touch their life and they pass on, if you touch their life and they're entering into the world, there are so
Mm.
many ways that we can get this right. And so I happen to fall in the space of birth and death really right. And I think we have to get those portals right.
You know, yes, I underscore getting those portals. As you were speaking and sharing so beautifully, I thought of my partner. My partner is an ICU nurse
Mm.
who cares for people in their last moments.
Yeah.
I'm a little emotional. It could be the full moon, could just be thinking about life and death. But what he said was, very similar to what you shared: washing the body, styling the hair, lotioning the body,
Yes.
talking to someone, even if they're in a coma. Like he does all of that. And he's like, I just want to, he's like, even though people may not be there, or he's like, we don't know. So giving people that care
Yes.
and that dignity
Yes.
in these moments where like our society, so this is the other thread I wanted to tease out, our society systemically shuns and abandons people giving birth and people crossing over. Like these are the times where like, don't see your person, they're in the hospital, don't go near it. Oh, someone's giving birth, like they're alone and kind of like sequestered, and then Lord knows what can happen to them. Like that was also something that made me think like these are the times of the mystery, the times of the intensity that there seems to be a kind of pushing away. And I was wondering if you've like thought about that at all, or if you wanted to share anything about that.
Yeah, I think that this, the rewarding of youth culture, the, like you said, the shunning and tucking away and the disappearing of our ancient people, of people who are not able-bodied, of people who are differently bodied, of people who live in bodies that are unhealthy, um, right? Like I think that there is um, uh, a blaming, a shaming,
Right.
a decentering, um, and a punishing, for aging and growing older, a punishing for a body that no longer can do certain things, a punishing for needing supports because we live in this sort of rugged individualist space, right? Where if you can't do it on your own, if you can't pull up your bootstraps, like like what are you contributing, right? And so this
Yeah.
idea that like we don't see ourselves in community and that we don't see how important it is. I mean, we actually have evidence that shows that even our oldest ancestors, when one was wounded, they carried.
Right.
So they carried. So, and
The
which
broken
meant that
leg.
there was a broken leg. They had to carry, which meant that the human bonds were really important.
Mhm.
People and community were really important. So we are missing that. And I think
Right.
the disappearing of people because of our, the sort of the culture that we live in um, that is about speed, that is about, what is it called? Like when things are immediate.
Well, productivity, as you're speaking, I'm like, okay, wait a minute. When someone is very old or elderly or disabled, they cannot produce. It is
Yeah,
capitalism. They
yeah,
cannot produce capital. They cannot create money or wealth or be seen as a productive member. And then there's this very odd contrast of someone giving birth. They're giving birth to another person that then becomes theoretically a production agent of
yeah,
capitalism. But those are
absolutely.
the two moments where it's very odd, this link between like capitalism and production and thresholds and liminal spaces and white
Yeah.
supremacy and the precedent of our country and denial and all of those things. So you're really helping me confirm and connect dots, here as I'm listening to you speak. And I'm really just grateful for that. And that kind of reminds me of a question I'd wanted to ask you. So many questions. We don't have that much time, but I wanted to ask you, there's like a few specific ones I wanted to shift over to, but it is that kind of, we're in this time as a culture. I believe, I wonder if you believe it too, that we are in this portal. We're in this transition time where we're being asked, many people who have had the luxury or the privilege to not look at certain truths are looking at certain truths, right? And I'm wondering, and I think a lot of harm gets perpetuated when people think they don't have the capacity to look at the truth or to see something beyond their belief, or that Cartesian sort of, I see this thing, I can prove this thing. And I'm sort of wondering, like, if you have any thoughts around potentially the transformation and or potentially liberation that occurs when we are able to maybe even compassionately but truthfully look at harder things. What have you seen transform, blossom, change as a result of being able to address these things, and or also just being someone in your life who has consistently been talking about truth?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's so many areas that we can look at where we see people growing in front of us and by choice, right? and also by force, right? I think there's, for me, there was a point, and I don't know where it occurred, but the level of patience and the level of grace that was provided prior to this moment to people who were sort of moving in ignorance and kind of like, doing things that like they, unbeknownst to them or unwittingly, where I might have had more, just like more patience. Like that one day I was like, yeah, no more, no.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to explain. I'm not going to write an email about it. I'm not going to get on the phone to talk about it. I've just really elegantly severed a tie. And if I see them, it's going to be peace and love in the streets, but I'm not putting energy there. Right. And I feel so good about, because when I hear certain people's names, I'm like, oh yeah, how are they doing? But it's like, I'm not missing them. And so I think that was one piece that was huge for me, was to not funnel energy towards people who are not committed to, aware of, or even considering doing the work. Then I would say fast forward to the spaces where people are truth seeking. These spaces that we're in, where folks are coming that are stumbling their way in and trying to navigate and not really 100% sure and whatever is going on.
Right.
But the commitment is there. Like,
Right.
I don't know the terms, or I don't know what like, I might not know
That's
the
right.
terminology, but my spirit is ready to learn. Like, those are the people that I want to like also embrace, right? Those are the people who have the capacity for change, and that are maybe not going to sound as eloquent as the people who can like rattle off a lot of like
Right.
jargon, but like are
It's like a
not living it.
PhD. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Because then you have the people who are saying shit but not living it. So then it's like, well, I want the people who are like, really working every day and not afraid to figure out how to navigate and be in space with and align with the struggle of our siblings, at whatever intersection, at whatever, marginalized identity, and wherever voice is needed. Right. And so what I think is happening, and an example that we see in our community, for instance, is that like the folks who are showing up, to training, even some stuff simple as like, for this first, trainings for everybody. Like, I want everybody, and I
Right.
especially want folks who are living in white bodies too, because I think that people who have privilege, I think that people who can walk into rooms where they're heard, and their voices and how they show up in the world makes a difference in the impact of the birth outcome for their client. We need that person, right, who can use their voice for good, who can be an intervention just with their presence alone, right? So we need that. And I also want people who are better equipped in culturally competent care and trauma informed care. And if we are saying that I don't want a space that's only one way, I do believe in spaces for, marginalized identities. I do believe in spaces for singular groups. But for the work that we're doing, I want everybody. We have non-binary bodies, we have trans bodies, we have Black bodies, we have every type of configuration of human that is
Age,
showing
where
up,
like geography.
all
Yeah.
ages, everything, languages. And so it's like, I want everybody in community together to learn how to be in community with one another, and also learn how to be of service. And so what I've noticed that's really beautiful is folks who assume that the space is one that is mostly marginalized people, will show up and write and say, hey, would it be okay for me to join? Here's what I would like to contribute. I'm so thankful for the opportunity to learn. And by the way, they're welcome anyway, but just to like show up in that truth of like, I am here to learn, I am here to be a student and a steward of this work, is really beautiful to see. And that's not something we'd have seen, years ago, but I'm seeing that more now, that there is a consciousness, and also an understanding of, the weight that people bring to a room. There's an understanding also about like, decentering, the white people in the room, and making sure that the material that is centered really focuses on folks who are underestimated and underserved, right? And so we do that too. But I'm so thankful for folks who are constantly engaging in not just reading and not just like Instagramming all the books on their shelves, but
In the
actually
room.
engaging.
Yeah.
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 And I'm more interested in what someone's equity journey looks like, not about like, what you can tell me about a class that you took or this workshop. Because by the way, we're not workshopping away racism. We're not workshopping away white supremacy. We're not and when I say white supremacy, I just want to be clear that we're talking about all facets, not just racism. We're talking about homophobia, transphobia, fatphobia,
Right.
ableism.
Yes.
We're talking about
Yes.
ageism. We're talking about sexism. We're talking about all the faces that show up that impact people and how they live on this planet, and how they live on this planet through oppression, right? And so that is what I'm talking about. And that's
Yes.
multifaceted, and it is, by the way, systemic. And so it is not workshopping away, but you
Okay.
have to show up every single day and live into the truth of where you stand, and how you can use yourself as a resource, how you can be. And by the way, each of us does have some type of privilege that we can lend to our siblings in
Right.
struggle. And so what does that look like? And how do you sort of pace your equity journey? How do you pace this? And so that's what I'm interested in. And I feel like that's more of what I am seeing, is that people are not just like, oh, I took this workshop, but people are on their own personal journeys. People are holding spaces. I heard about a group that one of my friends went to. She said it is just all white people who are doing work. There's no, like, they're not asking anyone. They're just doing it on their own. They're not telling Black people, by the way, we have this group of accountability. They're not, right? She's like, we're just doing this. She's like, and it's really amazing because they're learning so much, but they're also kind of, doing the work
Right.
and not hindering other people while they do it, and not pulling resources emotionally. And so I think that to see that people are at a space now where it's everywhere, the resources and information is everywhere. So it's really a choice if you decide to live in a consciousness that is not raised, right? If you decide to live in a low level consciousness, and one that is not about the vibrational mobility of all of us, then you are choosing to like be along the ground with everybody who is designing this earth in a way that creates pain and suffering for all of us. We can all rise. We can all live in a space and design spaces where there is not harm, where there is not supremacy of any kind, where there is also not pain. We can really get to a place where we're supporting each other and not identifying and also adopting the ways of our oppressor. And what I see a lot is people who, and this happens, and this is going to happen, if you are, and by the way, most of us are, if you are a human that has been oppressed, if you belong to an oppressed group, it is not automatic that in a time where you get power, that you will do the right thing and that you will do opposite of what was done to you, unless you are actively working to deprogram what you have been taught and to decenter the power structure that lives inside of you because it anchored you in a position of dominance over you. And so you will seek to dominate others. You will seek to cause pain onto others. You will seek to inflict what was done to you. And people say they won't, and they always do. We have so many living examples of it. And so all of us should move in a way that is aligned with where we would like to be. And when resourced, if you feel under resourced, when resourced, be in a position that you can also distribute power and understand that we can insource. We do not need like an externalized power source. We can insource for ourselves, and we do not need to dominate over others to facilitate more. Right? There's always going to be more if we move out of that framework that was placed upon us. Like I was talking about before with if we could think about a different system, if we're like in this place of only thinking the body is tethered, to the earth, and the soul cannot move around, then guess what? I can't even explore what consciousness could look like,
Right.
right? Because I don't have a framework for that. What's a framework that you can live into that's different than the framework that exists? Like, it's not only capitalism. That's not the only framework. This is not the way we have to be. And we don't have to allow this to turn us into something that
Yeah.
we are not.
Yes.
So I would invite us to live into and be reborn in this way. And I know that's possible for all of us. And so what I'm
Mhm.
so thankful for is a space like this where conversations are happening that are advancing us in consciousness, are advancing us in thought, advancing us in politic, advancing us in community, advancing us in siblinghood, advancing us in healing, because like all of what we need is already here. And I think it's a matter of just being able to uncover and look and see, okay, what am I going to do with this? And how am I going to make it more beautiful?
I'm just sending rainbows and heart energy. Yes, 100. I mean, there's again, like, we don't have much time left. And I mean, really just everything you said, again, there's all these layers. I'm seeing all of these weavings between spirituality, between your purpose, consciousness, cognitive bias. Like, it's interesting. I'm seeing parallels between being afraid to enter the unknown, like this fear of the mystery. Wait, what if I leave my little island? But wait, will I get lost? Why is
Mm.
getting lost bad? Why is not knowing bad? Why is having to be the authority or having to be, why is being comfortable? Why do we always want to stay there? How have we been conditioned to stay comfortable and separate? Because an
Mhm.
uncomfortability becomes there can sometimes be a searching, which then leads to community or leads to other ways of thinking, or just being okay with the unknown, knowing that I'm not going to know everything. I'm not going to have the answers, not in my own life, not in my own spiritual practice, not in the world. And how can I then, but all of us do have the answers
Yeah.
together.
Mhm.
Like, I can only talk about what I can talk about. I can only know my own experience. And even within that, I'm only speaking personally, like, I still continue to be incredibly unconscious. And this kind of work and this kind of unearthing, and I love your source within, it is an ongoing thing. There's never a
Yes.
destination. Like, a destination is a capitalist idea. The fact that
Mm.
we arrive somewhere, that all of a sudden we're whole or integrated. It's like we go through cycles, we get somewhere, and then we unravel again, and then we go somewhere else. And I wanted to speak with you. I could not talk to you about on this conversation. I hope we can have other conversations, because this is
Yes.
really what my heart needs right now. And I know many other people listening are feeling the same way. I wanted to talk about spiritual fitness.
Mm.
I wanted to talk about energetic hygiene.
Yes.
I wanted to talk about, because here's the thing, Latham. It was like 2 years ago, 2020.
Mm.
As you know, I call myself a witch. As you know,
Mhm.
I do rituals and spells. 2020, at the beginning of the year, my guides were like, no big plans. Do not overbook yourself. No spells. They were
Mm.
like, we're not doing any spell work this year. And it was like January
You're
2020.
like,
And
damn.
yeah, and it was like May 2020. And I was like, okay, God, now I understand. No plans,
Mhm.
no spells. But in doing that, like, and not, because a lot of my practice was this rhythmic ritual spell thing, I was like, okay, well, what do I have? And it actually, like, what if I don't have that? If they're like, they're telling me to take a break. And that was energetic hygiene, which, quite
Mhm.
frankly, number one, I had, quite frankly, like, just saying it here, speaking of, not being perfect, I kind of had ignored it on a level. Like, I kind of
Mhm.
wasn't going as deep as I needed to. And then as I explored more and more, energy realignment, releasing energy, energetic grounding, shielding, all of the practices, I realized, whoa, like when I'm really energetically aligned, I don't need to do spell work. Like, like it's this, I wish everyone knew about tapping into their energy, about protecting their energy, about transmuting energy. And I was hoping you could talk a little bit about maybe your view of energy, some energetic practices you do, energetic hygiene, and how that flows into your life.
Yeah, thank you for that. Like all of what you just said was so powerful in leading up to this moment too. So what's interesting about energy and your awareness when you start to, whether, some people come to an awareness of their own energy fields through practice first, right? So it might be like, oh, a movement practice. It might be breath work. It might be being out in nature. But at some point, you come to know your body in relationship with the world around you, but then you come to know this extension of your physical body that's more contained by spirit, which expands beyond your body and interacts with the the field around you, right? The external landscape. And so, how I see my internal landscape interacting with the externalized landscape is in a way where, like, I see my feet interacting with the ground, right? Like I see a relationship, and so I know that there's things that I can do for my body physically that will provide an energetic attunement, which can grow my energy, but also like my physical energy, like actually having the physical energy to actually go out and do things in the world, to be expressive, but also that will attune my spirit and allow me to have the not just physical fitness to do something, but the spiritual fitness to endure. And so spiritual fitness is about endurance, and physical fitness, right, is about energy. And I know that the energy metaphor is kind of like, because you think I mean, I'm talking about like expressive energy, action. So I'll say action, right? So
Okay.
physical is about action, and the internal is about endurance. So spiritual fitness is about endurance, right? And physical fitness is about action.
Spiritual fitness, you're defining it as the ability to keep aligned, to keep going, to keep.
It's like to keep going in the face of, right? So we think about like physically. So think about like what we all lived through, right? And what we all continue to live through. It's not the body that keeps going, because sometimes the body has to shut off. The body has to nap. The body has to sleep. The body has to log off of social. The body can't take in the imagery. You get physically exhausted.
Yeah.
But guess what? Emotionally, you have to keep going, right? You
Right.
have to hold space for community. You have to get so even though people say they feel exhaustion, right?
Mm.
What we find ourselves doing is moving into spaces to do somatic practice that actually provides attunement, but also provides resilience. So the spiritual attunement is about resilience. It's about endurance. It's about being able to continue despite all the things. And so I see it as like everything that we do, everything that you teach, everything that we provide for people as roadmaps and toolkits and spells and
Practices.
readings and
Yeah.
practices and ways, right, to navigate their way through the physical as well as the spiritual worlds, is an opportunity to develop that fitness, to exercise whatever the spiritual muscle is, right? And so when we work that, right, in a time like last year, I already have the resource to carry me through. So, like, even though I might have been physically tired, I'm not spiritually exhausted. I can keep going in the face of a George Floyd murder, in the face of an Ahmaud Arbery murder, in the face of Breonna Taylor, and show up and march. I can continue going, even though I'm afraid for my 18-year-old son to walk into the street as a Black man, right? I can continue going. So I have to cultivate this, not just in that time, but I have to be constantly working on building this resource, right? And so that's the difference, because that is where the physical has limitation, the spiritual does not, right? Like, we can continue beyond our body. Even when we pass on, we know that the spirit continues to live. So we know that there are aspects of ourselves. Like, I know I can reach out and touch you from here. And even if you're on a screen or on the phone, or you're listening to our voices, we can reach out and touch you now. Right. And that's because we're also working on building that endurance. We're working on building that spirit. And so, and if you're connected, if you stay aware of it, if you tool it, right, then there's more accessible to you. So I feel like, a lot of again, we have an externalized culture. You're talking about this, like what capitalism presents to us is that we are our bodies, right? Which is why if your body is failing you, like, then you're disappeared. But we are not just our bodies, and we can move beyond our bodies, and we can use our bodies as tools, just like we can use spirit as a tool. But I would love to invite the inclination of like, not just thinking about the ability and the threshold you can take your body, but I would invite us to think about what are the practices that fortify us so that we can continue and actually expand beyond what our body can do, and ask our spirit to do that work, because that is available to us. And that is what I constantly call upon. When I know that physically I cannot continue, I'm like, okay, cool. I'm like, all right, come on your way. Welcome. Right. And this is when we call in guides and we call in ancestors, we're asking them to expand on our capacity to do work, right? I cannot do it on my own, not physically, but spiritually. In spirit, I can do it with you, right? And so that is really what we are here to cultivate and understand and come into community with. And in whatever way you can find your rooting, sometimes it's plant allies, sometimes it's working with spirit, sometimes it's going to see someone who's from a different wisdom tradition that can help you see in a different way. Like, find what's going to start helping you to become more connected, so that you can actually channel this resource. Because, by the way, this is an underrepresented, underutilized, trusted resource, because everything's so focused on the physical body, right? And so if you can develop that spiritual fitness, if you can cultivate your energy and continue to, in your actual physical life, create boundaries around the things that actually deplete it, then it can continue to expand. So those practices, when we think about in our physical, like, what are the things that drain you? I just make a simple list of like 2 things, like what tires me, what inspires me, right? Those things, then I know what's going to feed me spiritually, right? Because if I know what physically is draining for me, I know that starts to wane on how I show up in the work that I have to do that is beyond my physical body, and I can't be depleted there, right? So I try to draw upon the boundaries and then the rituals that provide space for me to help to help me continue, in ways that are not necessarily physically possible always. And so I think that the narrative that I'm seeing, about rest, I think is really beautiful. And I do think that physical rest is very important. Spiritual rest is too. But I also want to invite in that, we have built-in resilience practices. All of us do. They're ancestral. They're in our bodies. They're encoded in our DNA. And I would invite that we come into relationship with these practices because they're free. And come into relationship with these practices because they make you feel good, and they also help. They're designed to help you actually work with spiritual fitness. They're designed to take you out of your thinking brain into your feeling body, and expand beyond the realm of consciousness that you're normally in. Sarah was talking about liminal space. It's designed to help you get to like activate the limbic system, which is your emotional motor system, which then gets you into a space where you feel that you're in between worlds. That is what all these practices are for, right? To take us out of this physical world that binds us and that controls us, and where we're oppressed and where we're operating under certain forces, and expand us.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what's available. So yeah, so like I think we gotta, spiritual fitness all the way. Yeah, like spiritual boot camp.
Absolutely. You're also someone who, again, from my vantage point, someone who doesn't know you well, but sees you. You're constantly kind of, I mean, I've just seen you go through a lot of transformations and growth and expansion and trying different things, moving from someone giving birth to a doula, to a teacher, to someone creating a school, to someone creating, advocacy. Like, how do you know? How can you tell when you're ready to go to a different level or you're ready to swim in a different state of transformation? Do you have internal, or it seems like also I have sort of sense that in your life you kind of put one foot in front of the other and you're kind of sort of guided. I was hoping you could just share with the listeners like how that's happened for you.
Yeah, you're so intuitive. It has been one foot in front of the other. It also has been by the pulling of my horns. I'm super stubborn. I'm really stubborn. Sarah said a lot about my qualities, but didn't mention that one, which is that I am really stubborn. I am somebody who like you could like drag, you got to like pull me to certain things. And so then when you think about like change, um, and people are like, oh my God, I resist change. And I feel like I am in that category of people who resist change, but also very much welcome it in certain ways. So I have this duality where I'm like not excited for it, but when it's here, I'm fine, And I feel like that's what it's been. It's been that I am called to do this work. And I often talk about the difference between like passion and calling. And because a lot of people call the work their passion, and that's great. I am not passionate about it. I think I'm passionate about art. I think I'm passionate about gardening. I think I'm
Music.
passionate about music. Yeah, I'm passionate about those things. But what makes me get up in the middle of the night to show up at, the bedside of someone who is welcoming a human earthside is not passion. It is calling. And it is what's deeply ingrained as a mandate, a sacred contract. I am obedient to this calling. And what that means is it disrupts my life. I miss out on sleep, which I'm very protective of. I miss out on events. I miss out on social things. I've missed weddings and birthdays and all kinds of things to serve. And so it's not this glamorous, like really, even though people think that it is, because wow, like it's so amazing. It is fulfilling, but it is disruptive. And so it's not a passion. It is something that I show up to do because I'm mandated to do so. I was anointed to do so. And I've been really following these ordered footsteps, right? Like I have not deviated from the course which was mapped for me. And so what I believe is that, all of us are born on mission, right? And all of these things that we encounter, right, in our lives, where trauma, adults that are like not well equipped to like raise us, and things that we encounter along the way, can take us off course. And then we eventually find our way to a place where, and this place will evolve, right? Like you'll be at one point and then something else, right? So it's never just like the one thing that you're here to do.
Thank you.
But
Thank you.
there is one like one larger sort of mission, even though it comes in many facets, right? Like the way that it expresses itself is always going to be different. But the actual mission that you're on is one that like it's almost like you're encoded with. And you will know what's aligned at every juncture of your life as you reiterate and have different versions of yourself that express through this work, right? Whatever that work is. And so for me, finding my way, it was like I had to have my son, and then I had to become a single mom, and I had to struggle with no child support, and I had to, right? Like I had to have those experiences, and I had to go through that also to be able to hear clearly, because the call was also came with no guarantee of stability, right? And so
Right.
oftentimes we feel really deeply pulled to do something, and then this practical side of yourself shows up and says, well, how do you make money? How do you, and here's what's wrong with that, is that, again, what Sarah brought into conversation really early on, that we are governed by is, and all of us are affected by this white supremacist patriarchal capitalist framework. And so all of our decisions and our orienting and even our internal compass itself is steeped in this system and way of thinking. And so all of the choices that we could be making that could fortify ourselves, that could impact lives, that could make a difference,
Yes.
are going to be hinged upon whether or not we can be productive, we can, right? And so we will actively decide against ourselves. We will actively tell ourselves no instead of listening to a call to do something, because it's misaligned with this internal compass, which has been basically like rerouted, right, towards goals that are outside of yourself and actually the mission that you were put here to do. So I invite us all to like really think about what it looks like to be fully expressed in the work that you're meant to do, and in the way you want to love, in the way you want to commune, in the spaces you want to occupy. I invite us to think about what it could be like to be, not even just fully express, like unfurl yourself and take up more space and inhabit more space around you, exist in spaces that you're not, to quote unquote, supposed to be in, love people in ways that they've not been able to be loved, like free yourselves, right? I invite us to like move from a liberation framework, which is one that would tell you that you should exactly be doing that thing and everything. And this is not from like the kind of, yeah, kumbaya, the universe will provide. It's not from that framework. It is from one of a deep understanding and knowing that, yes, I am meant to do this thing right here. And in that knowing and in that purpose, there is this incredible vortex that you create that draws energy and resources to you to help as
Mm-hmm.
allies. So it's not just this like,
Mm-hmm.
passive, the universe will provide.
Mm-hmm.
It is
Right.
actively choosing yourself. It is actively choosing the calling and answering. It is actively choosing obedience to the path that actually creates the energy flow that moves towards you. So it's not just waiting and this idea of passively waiting. It is an
Mm-hmm.
action oriented choosing of self. It is
Yep.
an action oriented choosing of a path, and also showing up every day
Mm-hmm.
to tend to it. So it's like gardening. We believe that something will grow. We tend,
Yeah.
we pour water, sunlight comes, right? But we believe, right? Which also helps it to grow. And so it is that. So it's different than just like this
Yep.
idea that people are perpetuating, like, yeah, if you just think you'll grow rich, it's not this. It is,
Or, sorry to interrupt you.
no, no, go.
Keep going. No, keep
No, no,
going.
no, you go, go, you go, go, go.
Or that in order for something to be aligned or ordained, it has to be easy.
Yeah,
Like things
forget
just have to
that.
flow right in. And it's like what I hear you saying too to anyone listening who's like, but I can't make a living doing this, or I don't know how this is going to be. Just ask yourself, how can I bring this forth?
Yes.
It doesn't have to be an opera. It doesn't have to be a masterpiece record album. It doesn't have to be a fully realized, materialized school for adopted kittens or whatever.
Right.
How do I bring this calling or this inkling or this instinct or this energy I just am curious about and want to explore. How can I bring this forth in a way? How can I just begin?
That's it. I love that. How? And start to take little steps. Like, we are so hindered, and it's so sad as I think about it, because so many of us, right, will be influenced and listen to this and be like, yeah, I'm gonna go. And then what we'll do, we'll start we'll unhook ourselves from possibility ourselves. Like, forget like anybody else stepping in. We'll do that ourselves. And it's the same framework, right, that we operate in when we talk about systems that are operating on us, that are keeping us separate, that are keeping us from thriving, keeping us connecting with each other. They know we will self-destruct, right? And so they know, here comes a movement.
They're banking on it.
They're banking on it. There you go. They're banking on it. So when you don't choose you, right, there's already a belief and an expectation in place that you will never go do that thing that you were sent here to do. And what a shame for you not to achieve. And I don't mean in this like success framework. I mean the idea of a seed that was meant to become and did not become fully expressed. What a shame. What a waste of the potential of an oak tree. Like, you need to root yourself in the soil that's nutritive. You need to root yourself in the spaces that are going to ground you and support you and anchor you. And you need to give yourself the permission to unfurl and grow.
My love, my dear, my genius.
My beloved.
You are in a time of huge transition yourself.
Yeah.
You are honoring the transition of a beloved member of your family who passed on. You are honoring the transition of your child who is preparing to move, literally. How are you honoring yourself and your transition in this time?
Well, really soon I'll be calling on people like you, the aunties that will help me to, make it through. I think this is a time that, people really don't focus on like empty nest and what it's like when, right? Like when you transition from taking care of people, whether that's through caregiving or parenting or whatever it looks like, whether it's through having pets. And there is this really necessary space that needs to be explored, but also prepared for when you are alone in that way. And so, what I am working on, and I haven't started yet, but I've been thinking about it and I'm conscious of it, but I've also been a procrastinator because it's another quality that I have.
Hello. Hi.
Right.
Yes.
And so what that's asking, or I should say, what that's bringing me to sort of think about more is the idea of creating like a new community, like the one that I had when my son was born, for this new phase of my life. So to kind of like usher me into this new phase. I'm still a mom. I'm still there, but I don't have anything to fuss over. Like, I don't have a child in here to kind of every day do all the things that you would do. And so in pouring my energy into the work, but also into others, I want to recultivate relationships that I wasn't able to kind of keep that good track of, and especially COVID was a really great teacher in that. And so I hope to do that. And I hope to lean on people in a way emotionally to help me in moments where I'm trying to just like give my son some space. I need to have a couple speed dials so I don't dial him. And so I'm figuring those things out. And as I have a very heavy teaching season, I've just been kind of like finding little getaway moments and beach moments and just getting my feet in some water and some sand and reading. Honestly, Sarah, like, I'm like, your book's coming with me to the beach because I haven't been able to fully finish. So I'm excited to like be able to dive in more, right? And so I'm thankful for things like that, like little things. Like, I'm one of those people who's like, if I can get a book, I completed one, so I'm like, yes, I'm on to my next book, right? That makes me feel good. I have some puzzles. I've been doing stuff like that. So just like, little small moments and tending to the garden, things like this, that just make me feel joyful and will keep me busy.
Yes. It's been such a pleasure, such an honor. where can people support your work? Where can people find you if they want to hire you, work with you, just follow along with your life?
Thanks, love. So on the Obama's internet, you can find us at mamaglow.com. It's mamaglow.com. And then if you're on Instagram, I'm Glow Maven, GLOWMAVEN. And then if you're interested in more maternally oriented stuff too, we have Mama Glow on Instagram. It's just MAMAGLOW. Yeah, we have trainings, we have workshops, we have events. I'm just excited for you to, find the things that might move you and, hang out if you want. I'm just excited to be here with you, Sarah, and in community with you, and thankful to kind of have this type of conversation. It's like, for those who don't know, well, of course you don't know, but Sarah and I, when we get on the phone, it's like this. So I feel like we
It
just had,
is.
you know what I mean?
I know.
We just get to hear us on the phone. So I just thank you for another powerful
yes.
conversation like I get to have with you offline. And I love you.
Oh, I love you so much. Thank you so much. And we'll talk soon. Bye.
Bye.
Okay, my babes, I really hope you enjoyed the show. If you enjoyed it, if you enjoyed the conversation, give Latham a follow, drop her a note, let her know what you loved. Let us know what you loved about this conversation. These are my favorite kinds of conversations to have. And I've got a lot cooking. There's a lot that I'm doing behind the scenes. I have 2 classes coming up in September. One is a short 2-hour workshop about tarot constellations. The other is a longer 4-week, more intensive class called Embodying Abundance. If you want more information about either one of those, or just want to know what I'm up to, which also includes preparing the 2022 Many Moons Lunar Planner, I'm deep in the thick of getting that ready to go to the printers. Yeah, it's been a busy summer, let's just say. But yeah, if you want to know more about what I'm up to, just sign up for the newsletter. For everyone who supports this podcast with your attention, with your sweet messages, with your reviews, with your financial support through the Patreon, thank you, thank you, thank you. I am so grateful to all of you. Have a beautiful week. Take care of yourselves. Bye. Moonbeaming is brought to you by The Moon Studio. It is created and hosted by me, Sarah Faith Gottesdiener. It is edited by the incredible Caitlin George Parker. Additional support is by Stella Hartman. Music is by Will Owen and myself. If you like this podcast, you can support us by going to Patreon/The Moon Studio and becoming a patron. You can give this podcast 5 stars wherever you listen and also subscribe. We'd love it if you could let 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 or more friends know about us, and we accept all good vibes. Thanks so much for supporting us. Witches in the ocean's waves, singing with the sun. Witches here.